Hello everyone, welcome to day 3 of anniversary buffs in this episode of Buff Breakdown. Today it's a Saber day. Today's buffs include Void Shiki and Mr. Fergus. Something worth noting is that 3 days in, every single buff so far has been skill buffs, so it remains to be seen if they're gonna buff any MPs, or if this is actually gonna be a pattern. And speaking of patterns, I'll share you one that I realized today with these buffs. And also, yes, I was totally wrong with these buffs. My predictions for today were Mordred and Caesar, so yeah, rip streak, it's gone. But anyway, let's get right into tackling these buffs. There's a bit of stuff to dissect here, I feel like. So we're gonna start with the Void Shiki buff. So, good old Void Shiki. Certainly a bit of a tragic servant. Mostly, a lot of people know why. The fact that her MP has instant death before damage as an AoE arts DPS, and also for the fact that the MP only has one hit, are seemingly things that just prevent her from ever reaching heights that some other like more modern servants would. It is a bit unfortunate, but yeah, certainly not a bad servant by any means. Now, they buffed the third skill in her kit, which honestly, if I was to buff one of the skills, this was probably it, because it was always kind of awkward anyway. This wasn't a bad skill by any means. It's a 4-turn cooldown, which is very good, and it gives us a nasty 5k heal. Nasty in a good way, obviously, for self when you use it at the cost of 10% MP gauge, though. So it was never really that good or bad, it was just an interesting skill. But now, there's actually quite a bit of changes here. So first of all, there you go, good old battery memes. Yeah, she gets a battery. Up to 30% on use. So whenever you use this, no matter what, she always gets the 30%. But now you can also target this skill. Yes, indeed. The demerit is still there, so someone has to lose 10%. Well, unless you're at 0, then you obviously don't lose anything. But now she can avoid it herself. Although the target also gets to heal now, so sometimes it might be a little bit awkward. Like if you want to heal herself, you will have to pay that potential tax of the 10% MP gauge. Granted, you would get more just because it goes up to 30% from the battery you get anyway. So at rank 10, even if you target herself, you would still get a net 20% battery, which is still not bad, especially, again, this is a 4-turn cooldown. So I feel like now this skill is actually very legit. Definitely not game breaking or like an overpowered skill by any means, but now I feel like this would be okay in modern standards. I'll mention this briefly, she didn't even get buffed, but in case people didn't know, Archer Arturia from Summer 1 actually shares the exact same skill. Effects-wise, it's still titled differently, even has a different icon, but a lot of people don't know this. This is exactly the same skill that Saber Shiki had before it was buffed. So now I'm wondering if they were ever buffed this for Arturia, because this is the exact same skill numbers-wise and effects, just with a different name. So who knows if this will be buffed in the future as well. I guess at this point it's worth talking about Saber Shiki's loop potential. She could always do it. It was never really pretty. It was very demanding, and it was never like amazing to begin with. You could still do it even before this buff with the double Castoria Oberon, and that's still the same setup you would need. It doesn't really change at all. As you can see, the numbers are right here under Void Shiki. They're not the best. You can absolutely do farming with her as well if you want, but like just compared to a lot of the other servants, especially considering how demanding it is, you do need a full 100% starting gauge, be it from either a super scope flat out or like a combination of an append or a regular K scope. And also you need both Castorias and an Oberon as well, so it's definitely a very much on the demanding side, and I wouldn't really recommend it for most people, only mainly for people that are really like big fans of her, if anything. But again, it is doable, and this will not really have the biggest impact on it. Like this was kind of the case already, so I just wanted to put that out there, I suppose. Now, how much difference will this actually make? If anything, I feel like this is going to be a much better change for her in terms of boss content. Farming, I'm not really seeing it still. There's a way better options out there, especially among AoE Sabers especially in the Buster side, if you have the tools needed. So, and for art sides, you also have more options like Muramasa, and honestly, even Yasun is way more accessible. Granted, he doesn't have the best damage, but still. So this is where I had the two buffed servants today placed on my Saber tier list much earlier this year. I feel like I can put her in A now. Maybe a low A. I still feel like this is fine, because now she has a much bigger presence in challenge quests, at least, because her MP uptime will be quite a bit better. I still like the fact that the skill has a very low cooldown. Maybe this is a bit too hasty of me, but I feel like this is kind of fair, even if she can't get the best use out of the arts meta supports due to her MP having such a sad hit count. At least Saber Shiki finally got something else besides the MP buff. Because I feel like she, honestly, possibly was the weakest AoE Saber. It was between her and Arthur, so I'm glad they at least gave the buff to someone who kind of needed it, so that's good. Now, let's talk about Mr. Fergus. Now, the theme of these days so far was that one buff was kind of meh, and the other buff was really amazing. Today, I feel like we're improving, because the Shiki buff is definitely not meh, and this right here is the amazing buff. So again, really good stuff. It's another skill buff, like I said, so let's just immediately look at what Fergus does nowadays after this. So as we all know, good old Fergus, AoE buster, DPS, not really a farmer because he lacks the battery, etc. But yeah, he also has a full gorilla deck, which is very significant now with this buff. So they buffed the second skill, which honestly used to be not good. Very passable, barely passable I would say, but not good by any means. So it was a defense buff for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown for 25%. Not too bad, but it also came with a hefty, and I mean hefty demerit. When you use the skill for the next 3 turns, it's a coin flip whether you can land offensive buffs on him. And he even has one in his own kit before this as well in this attack buff. So order was also very important. And this makes supporting him much harder as well. But now, after the buff, so first of all, the demerit is just gone. So that's already the first buff. There is no more demerits, a nasty demerit. So great. The defense still remains the same for 3 turns, 25%. That's fine. It was already good. But now as well, in addition of removing the demerit, he gets up to 20% buster up for self for 3 turns and 50% buster crit damage for self for 3 turns. All of this again on a 5-turn cooldown is very similar vibes to the Deermood buff of yesterday. I love it. It's amazing, especially because he never had buster up in his kit to begin with. So now he has 2 mixed buffs, meaning they multiply, which is amazing. And keep in mind, both of these are 3-turn uptime on a 5-turn cooldown, meaning also the uptime in general for his entire repertoire is very good. Fergus is looking real solid right now. Especially because, remember, his MP has been buffed in the past as well. It's not the best effects-wise, especially because the defense down is after damage, but it also always dealt decent damage, at least. And now with this, it's even better, so I really like the uptime in his kit. The only thing I would like to see in his kit now is like Star Absorb, because he has the buster crit damage now, but obviously with supports is not that needed because you have stuff like Koyanskaya who just does that for you, basically. So the man definitely is not an amazing farmer still by any means, but I feel like he could be an absolutely legit DPS choice now. I placed him at C+, which is around average in the tier list before this buff happened, and I felt like that was fair still to this day. But now, I am very much liking it. This honestly is the biggest buff so far in my opinion. The Deermood one was arguably the biggest one before this, but this not only added 2 new effects as well, but removed a very big demerit as well. So it's like it's a huge buff, and it's again very spot on. I'm very happy with this buff. Maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but for a 3-star servant, keep in mind again, I'm not comparing rarities directly here because that's how my tier lists work. I think I'm gonna put him up a full tier actually. Again, maybe premature of me because I have barely done any labbing with this yet, so feel free to call me out on this if you disagree. But yeah, I feel like Fergus is not real solid now. So to recap, Saber Shiki buff, it's good. It's not groundbreaking, doesn't really change how her farming works, but it definitely gives her more presence in challenge quests. And for Fergus, also, he doesn't really farm well at all right now, but he has a much bigger focus than he used to have in challenge quests, so kind of similar buffs in that sense, I suppose. But yeah, I honestly approve both buffs, especially the Fergus one. Very solid stuff. And for tomorrow, and this might actually happen on stream if I am actually doing a stream as scheduled, so you might see my chat with me tomorrow as well. We have a 4-star assassin and a 1-star rider. Now obviously the 1-star rider will be Bart, because he's the only 1-star rider, so we already know who that's gonna be. But now my prediction for the 4-star assassin is Concert U, aka Guchan. But now, as I was saying, there's a bit of a pattern going on. Let me explain. So Saber Shiki got her raid up today on JP, and the buff happened on the same day. Now tomorrow there will be a raid up for Assassin Ushi, who is a 4-star assassin. So if this is maybe establishing a bit of a pattern with some of these buffs, we could be seeing something like that. I'm not gonna like completely discount that fact, but I'm still sticking with my good champ prediction here. Also, same applies later, because 3 days from now we'll get the 5-star foreigner buff. Now the banner will have 2 5-star foreigners on raid up, Voyager and Abigail, but if we're looking at the dates, this is exactly the same day where Voyager gets his raid up. Abigail is 2 days later, so I don't know. Could be just a coincidence on Saber Shiki's timing, or maybe it's a pattern. We shall see. If you enjoyed this episode of Buff Breakdown, please do me a solid and press the thumbs up button. Really helps out, lets me know you like this sort of content and keeps me making more. Speaking of which, stay subscribed to not miss out on any future uploads, and otherwise I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Alright, peace out.